Okay, so I was quite literally in the middle of recording audio for my Kingdom Pet video when I realized, oh wait, it's August 2nd, which means Joy Creation Office demo's out. Let's see what Nixon and the team are cooking. And... oh, son of a... over next to the building. My flashlight's out! Oh, you have to be kidding me. Hi! Son of a bitch! Oh no! Oh no! Okay, yeah, so Kanito buddy, you're gonna have to wait because the Joy Creation Office demo has me by the throat and has made me more excited than any FNAF game has in recent years. And I was someone who, while very excited for the demo, I was also really scared and skeptical that it wasn't gonna live up to mine and many others' expectations. But in hindsight, I'm so glad I was mistaken. Now this video is gonna act as a mini review for the original's Office as well as the remake's demo because there are so many differences and I personally already had my issues with the original, so this would be a good way to express those opinions. And without any further ado, let's get started. Now for those who've never played the Joy Creation before, some context is needed about the original game's story, but if you already have a pretty good grasp on the story, just skip to the timestamps on screen. In the original game, we play as a fictional version of Scott Cawthon and his family, where one night, a man named Michael, presumably a demon pretending to be Michael Afton, ends up in our home, and after inviting him in and putting the kids to bed, demons enter our house and start to take the form of Scott's creations to terrorize his family. From his infant child in his crib, his wife in the living room, Scott himself in the office and attic, and Michael in the basement, where the demons force him to merge their bodies together to form Creation. But when Scott ultimately resists in the attic and manages to hold Creation and Golden Freddy back, Michael warns him that this won't end at 6 AM and that his resistance is ultimately futile. Before taking his place to keep FNAF going forever or give them closure or something, it wasn't really clear to me during my playthrough. In the remake, however, we play as the creator, where one night, while working on our visual novel style game, our computer blue screens, and when we get back from fixing the fuse box, we're greeted a message on our computer, where something, calling us their creator, forces us to play a game, which turns out to be an endless loop of us trying and failing to strive against the animatronics, until we eventually flash Freddy 12 times and he transforms either a really cool redesign for Freddy, or the beginnings of this game's version of Creation. And as the clock chimes in the back signaling our victory, we get a call from our Creation, leading us towards living room. And that's where the demo criminally ends, like oh my god. And overall, I really like the new direction we're going in, as it already feels like a much more fleshed out story. Moving over to the game's visuals and atmosphere, the original's Office feels very barren and empty with not a lot visually going on here, and sure it's got its moments. I'm sure we all have the image of Chica crawling through the wall burned into our minds, but other than that, the whole place is really empty with a clean desk, barren drawers, and a room layout that honestly doesn't work for the Office vibe it's going with the only visually interesting segment of this level being the 5 AM mode that, while present in every other level, absolutely carries the Office's entire atmosphere. By adding a static filter, changing the room's entire color palette from a soft bluish gray to an eerie red, replacing things like notes on the pinboard with eyes, and making Chica's poster her ignited form, all come together to create a sense of panic in the player. And while nothing about the gameplay or difficulty has changed, the environment the player has grown comfortable with has, and it creates some great moments of tension. And one last thing I wanted to mention was the background sounds. Now for me specifically, sound design is such an important part of horror games, and it's amazing to see how these little sounds can create a sense of paranoia that burrows its way into your brain for the entire experience. And the Joy Creation Office has some great sound design, some standouts being the sudden knocking all around you when Foxy appears, the soft ticking of the clock in the background, and the distorted sounds of children singing that appear every so often. In comparison, however, the remake has honestly addressed all the issues I had with the original and then some. The new Office feels very lived in with random items scattered all over the desk and a room layout that makes sense for a home office. And the way it expands on the previously mentioned 5 AM mode by having everything around us distort as the night goes on, like paintings appearing suddenly, the room being covered in mold, and these really cool drawings that explain each animatronic's mechanics like mini tutorials appearing all around the room, like Chica's We Hide You Seek poster or Foxy's All Eyes on Me. And for anyone interested in who drew all the posters and achievement icons for the game, their name's Flayfright, they're an amazing artist, please go follow them on Twitter, and that is not a request, it's a demand. The remake also heavily expands on the background ambience, with you being able to hear breezing sounds and the animatronics moving around your office, the wind and rain hitting the windows from outside with the occasional thunder, and the blink and you miss it Chica moments where she stalks you while you're preoccupied with other tasks, all come together to create an amazing atmosphere of chaos and uncertainty for the entire level, making the player start to think, is this even a safe zone? Something's happening, and I don't know what. Speaking of Chica, let's quickly talk about the stars of the show. In the original game, the night animatronics were just wizard animatronics so you chuck them in a garbage disposal, which in all honesty works really well, with one of my favorite designs here being an original one by Nixon, that being Creation, who is the main antagonist the entire game builds towards as an amalgamation of the original 4 animatronics, and he looks and is animated spectacularly, and I honestly hope he makes a comeback in the remake. And speaking of the remake, they kicked things up to 11 with the character designs. The duo of Gabriel Caserta, I don't know if I'm butchering that, I probably am, and Coco's being absolutely cooked. Gabriel worked on the animatronics and he did a fantastic job, adding little details like extra wiring on Bonnie, giving Foxy a little top, and making Chica look like the absolute demon she is. And he took a very underutilized and basic design and turns it into this melty mess that so far really fits her character concept of climbing out of the inky depths and just looks fantastic overall. And Freddy, I'm just calling Freddy, I don't know if this is Creation or Freddy, it hasn't been confirmed anywhere, is by far my favorite design. His body is pretty much what I expected from Burn Trap when I first heard about him. His skull is half Freddy, half melted human skull, with teeth and a jaw, alongside his torso having a ribcage sticking out from the side. Like, they cooked with all of these guys, but Chica and Freddy especially. And the animation work here is chef's kiss. Coco's Beans really outdid himself here, like they just meant a paycheck for just the body punch and the Foxy pounces, bro. Which is only amplified by Nixon's in-engine effects for every jump scare. And that's not even mentioning the players' animations, which while super exaggerated, are really pleasing to look at. But for how much of a step up this is, there is one major issue I have with the game, and that's the lack of any form of tutorial. In the original, when you die to an animatronic, you got a little loading screen tip saying, do this next time to not die. But in the remake, other than the previously mentioned drawings, there's nothing here to really teach the player the basics. Two examples that immediately jump to mind is literally standing up and recharging the flashlight. And while I know Nixon is highly against adding pop-ups, simple things like one of the sticky notes on the monitor saying press right mouse button to stand or use fuses to recharge your light would have helped so many people, including myself, and would have been very easy to implement. Heading into the gameplay, the originals is very simple. You have a time limit of around 12 minutes to go around and find Freddy 12 times to make sure you don't just fail the level. During this time, we must also juggle the other animatronics and prevent them from destroying our cameras and impeding our progress. With Chica spawning 3 cupcakes you need to find in and around the room to get her to retreat, Foxy spawning on 1 or more cameras needing only a quick glance to get rid of, and Bonnie is really just here to be annoying and break your cameras, making the game harder because you don't know where Freddy is hiding, but simultaneously making the game a lot easier as Foxy can't spawn on broken cameras, making them effectively useless and allowing you to freely check the room. And while these are all fine gameplay mechanics, my main issue is the lack of a difficulty curve, as all the animatronics stay exact same without getting any harder to deal with, even in the 5 AM mode. And the lack of consequences for losing cameras outside of not knowing where Freddy is makes a core gameplay mechanic effectively a roll of the dice on whether you'll use it for the entire level. The remake, however, amplifies the gameplay to a great extent, with Freddy himself now being attached to progression of time instead of an arbitrary 12-minute time limit, with you needing to find him 12 times once again to beat the game. But unlike the original game, you now have to check 3 different spots on the cameras: the left side, right side, and the center. And if you're like me and forget which spot he's in after dealing with something else, you could potentially miss Freddy entirely, causing him to reset to a new position, which adds a level of nuance the original lacked. Alongside this, one of my biggest gripes in the original, that being the lack of a difficulty curve, is answered here. As throughout the night, as you flash Freddy more and more, Chica goes from having 3 cupcakes spawn up to 6 at a time. And oh yeah, she crawls out of the goddamn ceiling this time. Like, look at this, bro. I have to point out 2 things. One is the guttural sound Chica makes when crawling out of the ceiling, because this sound just somehow gets under my skin. And as I said before, sound design is such a huge part of what makes games so scary to me, so I'm really glad to see them going in a much more interesting direction for the sound design. And secondly is the cupcakes. Like, they are so cute, and I feel so bad when we literally blow them up. Like, I just love these guys, they're just little sillies. Moving on, Foxy has also been changed drastically, as now he can only spawn on 1 camera, but needs you to pop him 3 times in a row at the start, and as the night progresses, goes up to spawning a max of 8 times. And Bonnie, well, he's still Bonnie, but at least he can jump scare you now. One thing I will say is Chica is notably less aggressive in the remake, and it's so bad to the point that if she shows up near the very end of a run, it might not even be worth dealing with her, as you're more likely to find the last few Freddys and win the game than deal with her. Which is a shame, as in the original game, she felt far more threatening because how fast she shifted through the walls, but now she just slowly slides down from the ceiling, with my only death to her throughout like 4 hours of gameplay being out of curiosity for what her jump scare looked like. And finally, that brings me to by far the best addition to this demo, that being the fuse box, which makes it so that cameras can now be repaired, allowing Foxy to continue to spawn on those drained cameras, which adds consequences to your screw-ups. And alongside this, making fuses a limited resource which up to free spawning at any given time, with your cameras, flashlight, and main power system all needing fuses to function, adds a level of resource management, because if your flashlight dies, you're at risk of Chica and unable to find Freddy to progress time. But if your cameras die, Foxy might break in at any given point. But if your mains go out, then everything shuts down, which causes just a game over situation. And it creates some really fun scenarios where everything just goes wrong at the same time, and you have to decide which of the 5 fuse spots needs it over the others, and the consequences of those decisions potentially rippling throughout the rest of the run. Now, I'm gonna deviate from just talking about what's going on here, because I'm not sure words can describe how great of a section this was to experience. Chica's here. Chica's here. I need this fuse. Yeah, I need this fuse. 1. This 2. Oh, and the mains are going out! I've given up on naming the fuses. This is just main. No! I got jumped! Foxy jumped me! Never before have I felt this panicked and scared during a FNAF game, and still feel like everything was balanced to a degree that I could screw up, but if I consistently did it, then it was 100% my fault, which is still very likely, as even while I understand all the mechanics after multiple hours and 100%ing the demo, the Joy Creation is still a very hard game that I still find myself screwing up from time to time. And now it's time to address the elephant in the room. The video title. After all I've said, why do I think the Joy Creation is what FNAF needed? See, back in 2017, the Joy Creation made waves with people from all corners of the community pointing to it as what a FNAF free roam game should be like, even going so far to say the gameplay rivals, if not surpasses, the mainline games, which up to that point was FNAF 1 the Pizzeria Sim. And while I do love the mainline games, they were quite literally my childhood and I still enjoy them to this day. It feels like that in recent years, the horror part of horror game has been left to dry as FNAF tries to expand its audience, which is completely fair from a business and marketing standpoint, but I still feel that while Security Breach had a much different vibe than the Joy Creation and previous FNAF games did, it had a few areas that would have been perfect opportunities to lean into the more horror and decrepit aesthetics from the original FNAF series and the Joy Creation. A few that instantly come to mind while writing the script is the sewers and the endo daycare, and in saying this, I also have to point out that Ruin and Help 1 and 2 have been great steps forward in implementing these kinds of environments, and I hope that when the Joy Creation releases next year, it will be the final push Scott and Steel will need to try and fully lean into those environments and give some of us old fans what we fell in love with, but also keep this new aesthetic, because I feel like they both can coexist in a really nice way. So, overall, I love this demo. So far, it is insanely well polished, and I'm still of the belief that that ending is criminal. Like, it was such a fun game despite taking me multiple hours 100%, and it has already dethroned the original in my book, even with just 1 level out. And I honestly cannot wait for 2025, man. I just want to get my little gremlin hands all over that game to make a full comparison, because it seems like it's going to be amazing. And by the time I finish recording and editing this video, the Five Nights at Freddy's 10-year anniversary is most likely been and went unless I absolutely speedrun this video out. But it is insane to me that it's been 10 years. I can vividly remember back to 2014, like late December, when FNAF 2 released on the iPad, and my parents tried so hard to keep from downloading the scary animatronic game. And look at me now, Mom, I'm hyperfixated on this for the last 10 years strong. But I honestly cannot wait to see where FNAF goes next. With Into the Pit probably out by now and Secrets of the Mimic coming out next year, the future seems very bright for the franchise, but only time will tell. Now, I've got a Kinito Pet video to get back to, and let's be honest, I'll probably get distracted and make another video in between that, but whatever, see you next time.